turn our focus and attention for a minute over to the photo editor workspace. And this is where you want to go if you need to edit a photo, change a photo, and that includes doing things like resizing the photo, adding text to the photo, or doing any kind of image manipulation that you may want to do. Now let's go ahead and launch Photoshop Elements. And once we're here at the welcome screen, let's go ahead and select Photo Editor. And remember, if you're already in Organizer, all you have to do is go down to the Editor button and it will launch Photo Editor for you. If you launched your Photo Editor directly from the Organizer mode, then you'll notice that it's going to open with whatever picture you had selected in Organizer. However, if you launched it directly from the welcome screen, your screen's going to look more like this, and you're going to have to go ahead and bring in a photo. You can do that by coming up here to the Open button. Go ahead and click on the arrow next to it, and this gives you recent photos that you brought in, and you can just easily click on them and bring them up. Another way to do it is to go up to the File menu and go Open, and then you're going to go to your hard drive and you're going to select the file where you were saving your photos in Organizer, and then you're going to pick what photo you want to open to edit. Now that we've opened this file, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the Editor Workspace. And the first thing that you're going to notice is that there's 3 different modes that you can work in the Photo Editor Workspace. You have your Quick mode, you have your Guided mode, and you have your Expert mode. The Quick Editing mode is for people who are complete beginners to digital editing and people who want to make quick basic changes to a photo. As you can see in the Quick Editor, it's really easy to get around. And over here on the right, you have your basic adjustments that you would probably want to make to a photo without anything fancy, just some real quick adjustments. You can go to Exposure if you just want to change the exposure on a photo. You have all of these thumbnails to show you that's how bright that's going to be. So let's go ahead and just up the exposure by 1 point. And that's a little bit brighter and looks a little bit better, so we'll do that. Now the other things you can do in quick editing mode is you can play with your levels. You can mess with the color if you want to mess with the color balance, and once again you have these thumbnails to kind of help you through that process. You've got the color balance, which is your temperature and tint. And finally, you've got sharpen. A lot of the times you'll have a slightly blurry photo, so just sharpening it a little bit makes the image a little more clean, a little more crisp. So this is the basic adjustments that you can do in the quick editing mode, and they're all really easy and really quick. Also, on your left side, this is where your tool panel is. No matter what mode you're in, quick, guided, or expert, your tool panel is going to be on the left side. And in quick editing mode, you have a small amount of tools. You have magnifying glass, so you can zoom in. You have a hand, so you can zoom in and move the photo around. You have this quick selection. You have a red eye tab. You have a tab for whitening teeth. You have a tab to add text. You have a crop tool, and you have a move tool. So that's what's available to you in the quick edit mode. In the guided edited mode, Photoshop Elements 12 is going to do exactly what it says. It's going to guide you through editing the photograph. And it does this by giving you options over here in your panel bin for different edits that you can make. And they're all organized under different categories. You have touch-ups, you've got photo effects, and finally you have photo play. Now, to show a photo effect, you can try the depth of field. And once again, in the guided editing mode, the computer's really going to walk you through the edit. And it's going to tell you for depth of field, you can do a simple or you can do a custom. Now, what depth of field does is, a lot of times with digital cameras, when you're taking a snapshot, everything will be in focus. With depth of field, you can actually make an object the center of attention by making it the focal point and blurring out everything around it with the depth of field. And we're going to go to Custom, and we're going to use the Quick Selection tool. And right there, we've quickly selected the rose bush. And now you're going to add blur. And once you do that, you see you've blurred out everything but the rose bush and created a depth of field effect. So you go ahead and hit done. And that's how you do a simple edit in guided editing mode. Expert editing mode can be a little bit intimidating because all you have is you've got your photo here on your right, and then you've got these tools over in the tool bin, but you don't really have anything to guide you or give you any kind of direction about it. And that's because this is basically a mini Photoshop window right in Photoshop Elements 12. And if you're a little overwhelmed and don't know what all this stuff is right now, don't worry, we're going to be going over all the tools in expert mode during the rest of this course. Now let's talk a little bit more about the panel bin. All you have to do to view panels in the panel bin when you're in expert mode is go ahead and go up to Windows. And as you'll see here, you now have all of these windows which you can bring up in the panel bin area. So just go ahead and select, say, color swatches. And you can put it over here where your panel bin should be, and now you have some open windows with actions that you can go through and use when you're in expert mode. Now if you go over to guided, it's going to disappear, but when you're in expert mode, that panel will show up. You go back to window and go to adjustments. When you open adjustments, that panel is going to open. You can actually dock these together by putting one on top of another, and they'll move around together. If you want to open additional windows, come down here. Maybe you want to open history. I think you have a history right there. But you could pull this off and make it a separate window, and you could dock it down there. So you still have the panel bin when you're in expert mode. It just reacts a little bit differently. And your panels can be moved around in much the same way that they are in Photoshop. So that's your panel bin in the expert mode of Photo Editor. Another thing that you can do while in expert mode is you can look at the project and photo bin. And the project and photo bin is located directly below the workspace. And right here it says photo bin. And when you click on it, it will come up and you'll see that it's going to display thumbnails of any open files. So if we go over here and we open another file, hit open, you'll see that the project bin is now displaying thumbnails of both open projects. And by double clicking either the photos, you can navigate back and forth easily between the two photos. Now some other things that you can do is that you can drag the photos to rearrange them. Like if you want to bring that one over there, you can do that. You can double click a photo to bring it up again. You can rotate the photo by just simply clicking the rotate button, and that will rotate your photo. You can right click the thumbnail and select close to close it. Or you can just close the photo bin by going down to photo bin and clicking it. Next we're going to talk about the history panel. The history panel lets you restore your images to undo previous changes. Now while you have an undo button here that can undo the last thing that you did and maybe a couple steps back, if you want to go further, you can actually use the history panel to go back and undo the changes you made further back in the process. Now I already have my history panel open. But if you don't have your history panel open, you can go and find it by going up to Window, and then History right here. It's in about the middle of the screen. Or you can go to F10 as your shortcut, and that will open or close the history panel. And in History you have the image, and it shows you what image you're working on, and then these grayed out areas are actually the history of what you've done to the image. And they are in chronological order. Starts with opening the photo, and then after we opened it, we rotated it, then we rotated it again, and rotated it again. Now, history gives you access to go to any one of these states. If you want to go here, you can go back to the image in that state. So if you made a whole bunch of changes to your image and you don't like the way it looks and you want to go back to a previous state, you just go over to your history panel. And remember that the most recent things you did were at the bottom. And let's go all the way back to, say, the first rotation that we did. You can get rid of all the changes that you made just by navigating through the history panel. Now, there's something to keep in mind. If you select a previous state, like right now I have rotate here, every change that you made, everything that's blurred out, grayed out here, will be lost if you start working with it from this point on. So if you go back to a previous state in history panel, make sure that you don't want any of the changes that you made afterwards, because once you make a change, it will delete them all and you can't undo it. Now, to delete a state, what you're going to do is you're going to right click on the state that you want deleted. And when you right click, you're going to get this little dialog box. And you'll have two options. You can clear the history, which means you'd be getting rid of all the state changes since you last saved the project, or you can go to delete. So let's go ahead and hit delete, and that's just going to delete that state and everything that came after it. And it says delete state rotate, just to make sure that you want to do that. Go ahead and hit yes, and now you're back to open, which is the state right before the one you deleted. And just a couple of things that you may want to know about the history panel. The history is automatically going to save the past 50 states, and you can actually change the amount of states that the history panel will save for you. To do that, just go up to Edit and come down to your Preferences, and then go over to, instead of General, we're going to choose Performance. And then in the Performance dialog box, you're going to see History and Cache on the right hand side, and right now you can see that its history states is at 50. So just go ahead, and you can put anything up to 1,000 in here. I'm just going to go in and put 100 for now, and then just hit OK, and now you can save up to 100 history states. So whenever you're editing an image in any of the three modes, and you want to go back and undo all the changes, what you want to do is revert to the last saved version. And you do this by going up to your menu bar, go to Edit, and go to Revert. And that gets rid of all the changes that you've made. The next thing we're going to talk about is image magnification, how you can zoom in and zoom out. Now right now I have Navigator open in my panel bin. It's the second tab in on my panel bin, and you can click it and bring it up. If you don't have yours up, once again it'll be up in your Windows menu, and click your window and then go to Navigator or F12, and that will bring up that panel. And you'll see that when you're in the Navigator, you can actually zoom in and out without having to go over and use your zoom tool. If you go this way to the left, you're going to zoom out, and at the end you'll see what magnification level you're at. You go to your right and you're going to zoom in on an image. And the nice thing about the Navigator is that you don't only zoom in on an image, but say you're really close up like that. At that distance, it may be really hard to tell where you are in an image. But when you have your Navigator, you can see clearly this red box that's around the image, and you see the whole image. That tells you what part of the image you're zoomed into. And the other thing that you can do that's kind of nice in Navigator, when you're over the image in Navigator, you get this little hand. That's because you can actually move that red box around and navigate around the photo, which is why it's called the Navigator. Now let's go ahead and go to Edit, and then down to Preferences, which is the last line on the Edit menu. You can set your preferences in Photo Editor to determine everything from your cursor to how your files are saved, your performance, and your plugins. And whenever you want to change a preference, this is where you're going to go. Edit, Preferences. And this is where your submenu is for changing all of the general preferences or specific preferences for the Photoshop Elements 12 program. We're going to start with General, and the shortcut for this is Control-K. So click General, and let's look at this dialog box. In General, you have some choices. You have Color Picker, where you can choose which color picker you want to use, Adobe's Color Picker or Windows. You can also decide what the shortcuts are for step backward and step forward. Now, you also have a list of options here. And if you wanted to change any of these options, all you have to do is uncheck them if they're checked, or check them if they're unchecked. Let's go ahead and go to the Saving Files tab. Now, under the Saving Files preferences, you have options on how you want to save files. On your first save, you can ask if it's an original. You can always ask, or you can save over the current file. You've got image previews, and right now it's just at the default of always save. You've also got file extensions. You can use lowercase. You could have your files saved as uppercase if you wanted to. You also have save as to original folder. Now we're going to the performance preferences, and as you may remember, this is where we set your history and cache settings and where we set our history states from 50 to 100. And there's also a little slider here, so you can do that with your slider if you want to. The other thing that you can do within the performance setting is you can decide how much memory you want to use for the program. Now, if you have, for some reason, really low available RAM, it will tell you right here, and you can adjust that. You can also set your scratch disk from this menu. When you're done looking through the preferences, go ahead and hit OK. And that concludes our little walkthrough of the Photo Editor menu. We'll be talking more about the features of Photo Editor, particularly in Expert mode, in the coming lessons.